Evening at the Movies is a proud member of the I Did Not Make These Rankings podcast network. Other shows in the network include Mass Debaters, The Sip List, Crushgasm, Love is Black, Men Are the Prize, Crime Rewind, and Literature Reapers. You can find out all about our shows and more at idnmtrpodcastnetwork.com. Happy listening. You are now entering the world of a movie review. A world full of drama, joy, ridicule, movie spoilers, unpopular opinions, and adult humor for as far as the eye can see. Welcome to An Evening at the Movies.
Good evening, everybody. Welcome back to your favorite movie-based podcast. This is An Evening at the Movies. As you all know, the podcast where we eat the stale popcorn, we drink the watered-down sodas, and we discuss all of our favorite movies and why we love them. I, of course, am your incredible host who is flying hostily solo on this episode again because Amanda's getting ready for her vacation. But I digress. We're going to have fun. We're going to introduce everybody to a brand new guest on the show. And we're going to talk about an amazing, incredible movie that I can't believe it's been 3 years and we haven't talked about this movie yet. So before we get to the name of the movie that we're going to be discussing, though, I would like to introduce the world to Gary and turn the floor over to him to let him talk about himself and everything about him. So, Gary, the floor is yours, bud.
Hi, everyone. Thank you so much, Kasey, for having me on. I'm so excited to talk about, to me, one of the best Batman movies of all time, which is Batman 1989.
It really is. I'm not going to lie. And it's not even just for the fact that it's the best Batman movie of all time, but for people that have been around for the last 3 years and have listened to all of our episodes, everybody knows I'm a huge fan of, one, Michael Keaton, and two, Tim Burton. And ironically, combine the both for this one because we're going to talk a lot about Tim Burton in this, and we're going to talk a lot about Michael Keaton. Maybe some other people that were in the movie as well. I mean, it kind of, sort of, for the time, was an all-star cast. But I digress. But yes, Batman 89 is the subject for our amazing discussion today. But with all of that said, though, before we get to the discussion, as everybody knows, though, we have to do the background information on the movie. Batman released on June 19th, 1989, when I was still a wee young elementary school lad. As we said, it was directed by Tim Burton, released by Warner Brothers, had a budget of $48 million and a box office of $411.6 million. So, as always, though, we can't wrap up the background information, though, without giving our guest a chance if they would like to wager a guess at what this movie got as a score on Rotten Tomatoes.
Ooh, I would say, I'd say in the 70s, high 70s, mid 70s. I'd say I'm going to say 76 or 77.
You were the first person that actually got it right on the freaking nose.
Really?
Yeah, 76%.
There you go.
Which, for me personally, I think is a low number. There's some epically great Batman movies in the Batman universe. I would say this is probably my number one favorite, with a different one with a very similar villain being number two. Not going to name any names in The Dark Knight. But so yeah, and as always, if you guys are listening and haven't watched the movie yet, 35 years later, one spoiler alert, because there's going to be an awful lot of discussion about all the details of the movie. But if you so desire, you can hit pause right now and go sign into your Max account and find Batman there to watch, and then come back and finish this episode of the movie, obviously, because we need the views and the listens and all the other good stuff that comes along with that. So I could give a synopsis of the plot. I think probably the most concise way of doing it, though, would be for the Tim Burton Batman universe. This is kind of an origin story about how Bruce Wayne loosely became Batman. It doesn't give you all the details that Christopher Nolan does in Batman Begins, but it's a launching pad for the story that Tim Burton wants to tell you. So, and I feel like, okay, so discussion time. I feel like you can't have a discussion about Batman movies without having this question come up at one point. So I'm just going to rip the Band-Aid off right now from the jump. And we've talked about it on Amanda's other show, and I know we've talked about it a couple of times on this show as well. But Gary, who is your all-time favorite Batman?
Michael Keaton. Michael Keaton is the Batman. Yeah.
I would definitely have to agree with you on that. For me personally, I think there are aspects of all the people that have played Batman, I think, have captured essences of the character in some way, shape, or form. Even, God, forgive me for saying this, but Clooney and Val Kilmer.
I like Val Kilmer. I really like Val Kilmer. And George Clooney was an excellent Bruce Wayne.
My personal opinion is I always thought Kilmer and Clooney more attached themselves to the Bruce Wayne aspect of the character.
Yeah.
Where I feel like Christian Bale may have gotten the whole Dark Knight aspect of the character pretty well covered. I think if you want to encompass every aspect of the whole entire character, from Bruce Wayne to Batman,
right,
and everything wrapped into one, I think Michael Keaton, for me, in my opinion, is the actor that encompasses all of that.
I agree with you. Like you said, a lot of the actors brought a lot of great things. I mean, to me, George Clooney embodied Bruce Wayne. When he walked into a room, he owns the room. He has that power. Val Kilmer, he played a great Bruce Wayne. Also, he played a great Batman too. Even Ben Affleck, he played a great, Batman and Bruce Wayne. But I think Michael Keaton, above everyone else, was he was the number one Batman for me.
Well, I'm not going to speak on your behalf on this issue, but for me, like I said when I was giving the background information, this movie came out the summer between my 5th grade and 6th grade year in grade school. So, and the only reason I know that is because I happened to, get a Joker T-shirt for back to school clothes that year, and that was when you had all the Batman paraphernalia that was out on the market for sale, because it was being mass marketed to the world because it was the movie of the summer.
It was a huge hit.
Yeah. I mean, look at the number that I gave for the box office: $411 million.
And for that, back in 1989, that's a large chunk of money.
Yeah, that's one thing we used to do on the show all the time. But I'm not going to lie. No offense to the listeners. I love you guys all to death. And as always, when we get to the end of the show, I will, shower my love on you like I always do. But we used to do the inflation calendar
Right.
especially for like movies that are more than 20 years old, because then, if you're thinking about it from that perspective, you can really start to grasp the fact that like $411 million in 1989 probably would amount to.
Almost a
I'm not.
billion.
I'm not. I was going to say I'm not even going to try. Well, I will try and get like probably three quarters of them. 300
Yeah.
or 175 million to $1 billion,
Yeah.
and on top of it, to have the other factor that you have to factor into it too, though, is if this great of a movie had, I mean, it had the push from the studio behind it that obviously made it a lot of money. But if you look at everything that, if it was released today with social media and every YouTube and all of that to help push, you know, then what would this box office number would have been by today's standards?
And the movie was controversial at the time because people didn't want Michael Keaton to be Batman because everyone thought he was Mr. Mom.
Well,
They
also
they
at the
thought,
same, I mean,
yeah,
everybody also grew up with Adam West too,
yeah,
and um, I mean, let's be honest here. And I'm not trying to take a cheap shot at the original Adam West TV show by any stretch of the imagination, because again, that was my way youth. I mean, I grew up on reruns of that show before school, before I was school age. But that TV show and Tim Burton's vision for the story, totally not the same idea at all. It's dark, it's creepy, it's gothic.
it's
Um,
violent.
it, yeah, I mean,
Definitely more
Adam
violent than the Adam West version.
Adam West never dropped Cesar Romero in
Yeah,
a vat of acid,
right.
and yeah, granted, you don't really see a whole lot of the quote unquote damage that um, was done to that character, but I mean, still, when you're 10, 11 years old, seeing that can be traumatic violence to be experiencing for one of the, not for me, because I was watching horror movies when I was like 7 years old, but still. And I forgot where I was going with that, but I do know that there is a follow up question to the whole, yeah, favorite Batman question. But I will ask, and I will follow it up by asking this question: who is your all time favorite Joker?
Oh my God. Well, when people talk about and argue who the best Joker is, people have to understand what the job of the Joker really was in that film. What was his purpose? Cesar Romero, he was great for what they wanted. Jack Nicholson, he was fantastic for what they wanted. Joaquin Phoenix, that's exactly what they wanted. You can't really compare other Jokers because they're all different. They're all in their different worlds.
It is really hard. Um, and you have animated Joker, you have Heath Ledger Joker on top of all that too as well. And I personally, I find it hard to ignore the deep psychological work that Heath Ledger did for The Dark Knight. And I mean, I really, honest to God, hope that when the Academy Award voting went out, that it wasn't just a pity sympathy vote because he had passed away,
Because he passed away,
but
right?
but that they were honestly, legitimately honoring his work. And I will hold on to the hope that they were honestly, legitimately honoring his work. But he definitely went places with that Joker that I don't really think anybody else had gone up to that point.
No, no, he was the perfect balance between comic book and reality.
Yes. And definitely have to give hats off to him for that as
Yeah.
well. So, all right. So, as everybody knows, generally one of my first questions that I always ask for discussion, though, is what about this movie did you absolutely love when you first saw it?
Oh my God. I first saw it. I must have been like 4 or 5, getting the video from Blockbuster, the VHS tape, if we all remember what those were.
Yeah.
Um, oh my God. I remember I love the costume. I love Bob Ringward's design for the costumes. I love the set design. I love the gadgets. I loved everything about that movie. And I was so young. I didn't know what specifically I loved. All I know is that I loved it. And years later, I found out, oh, that's what I loved about it, and this is what I love about it. But the cast was great. Um, if anyone wants to go on Google and type in Batman Pinewood Studios, there were these two people at the time that snuck into the set of Batman and were able to walk around and take pictures. It's absolutely astonishing. The set design for Pinewood Studios back in the day was unbelievable. But I loved that. I loved the gadgets. I loved Michael Keaton. I loved Jack Nicholson. I loved Kim Basinger. I loved it all.
So this Batman, this particular movie was probably the third Tim Burton movie that I had ever seen.
Beetlejuice.
Beetlejuice was number two. Um, the first one was definitely one that most people don't think about when they think about a Tim Burton movie. But if you stop and think about it, it screams loudly and clearly that it's a Tim Burton movie. It's
Pee
just
Wee
not.
Herman.
Yep.
Yep.
It's just not as dark and gothic as
Yeah.
most of Burton's stuff is. But so yeah, number one was Pee Wee, number two was Beetlejuice, and then three was Batman.
But that's what's so great about Tim Burton is when you see a preview for a Tim Burton movie, you know it's Tim Burton. You know
Oh
it's
yeah,
him. The style, the black and white colors, the shapes, all that stuff is just all that. Even Pee Wee had so much Tim Burton in it.
well, and part of that too is you factor in even like the element of collaboration between Tim Burton and Danny Elfman, the guy
Right.
who did the score for literally almost everything that Tim Burton's ever made. I mean, Danny Elfman has that particular sound that
Yeah.
as soon as you hear the first couple notes of a song from a movie that Danny Elfman wrote, you know good and hell well, excuse my French, that it was a Tim Burton movie.
Yeah.
So it definitely combined, and on top of the fact that it wasn't just Danny Elfman though that created that musical world though too. On top of it, the soundtrack that Prince created as well.
Right. 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 Right.
I mean, that soundtrack, I would probably put it. I don't know exactly where I'd put it, but I would put it in probably my top 10 favorite soundtracks of all time.
Oh yeah. Yeah. Prince's music for that movie was absolutely incredible. I remember specifically the balloon scene at the end where Joker was handing out money, and then you hear that Prince song from when they're coming down the street. It's
Mm.
just so fantastic.
Yeah, and I think even at the same time, even Prince, um, fully understood the vision that Tim Burton was trying to create as well. So he added little flares here and there, and he defined it in his own way, but yet he didn't stray so far away from Tim Burton's vision that
Right.
it's all like, okay, Tim's over here doing his thing, Prince is over here doing his thing, Michael's over here doing his thing, and they can't all just get on. I think everybody that worked on that movie from top to bottom, I don't care if you were an assistant, second unit, actor, composer, director, whatever. I think everybody came together and worked really well as a whole.
Oh yeah, and that's what I love about Tim Burton is you can tell that he lets his actors explore on their own and do their own things and try different things. Because I have a feeling that he really left Michael Keaton alone. He said, and I trust you. You do what you need to do. And Michael Keaton played such a fantastic Bruce Wayne and Batman.
He made the audience forget. People may have had their doubts, like you said, because
Mr. Mom.
It wasn't a typical Michael Keaton type of role. I mean, he'd done other things other than Mr. Mom, Gung Ho, a couple of other movies he did throughout the early to mid part of the '80s. But then when the news broke that he was going to be the Batman in this movie, it's like, I don't personally remember thinking that because like I said, was like 10, 11 years old at the time. So I was just happy that they were going to do a big screen Batman movie.
And before Keaton was cast, I remember they offered the roles to Pierce Brosnan, but Pierce Brosnan said no, he didn't want to play a comic book character.
Again, catch-22 because I'm going to go far enough to say I'm not so sure Pierce would have fit into the whole Tim Burton effigy as well as Michael Keaton did.
Oh yeah, I mean, if we look back, I know that multiple actors were considered for the role of Batman before Keaton. Mel Gibson, Kevin Costner, Charlie Sheen, Tom Selleck, Bill Murray, Harrison Ford. I have a list here, and Dennis Quaid were all considered. But and then they approached Pierce Brosnan and he said no, and then they gave it to Michael Keaton. And I know that comic book fans were so mad that Keaton got casted as their superhero character that they sent over 50,000 letters to Warner Brothers telling them don't cast him. But I guess Tim Burton was like, you know what, he's the man for the job. Let's see what he can do, and he blew it out of the park.
But yet, still today, he is considered to be one of the top 2 or 3 Batman actors
of all time.
Of all time. I mean, okay, who is the one person that everybody was screaming to have back to play Batman again in that little cameo that he had in The Flash?
In The Flash?
Yeah.
He was the movie. I mean, when they were advertising it, they were advertising Michael Keaton is back.
Yeah.
It wasn't Ezra Miller, and that might be because of the controversy, but still was all about Michael Keaton.
Well, yeah, I can get the whole thing with the whole Ezra Miller thing. I mean, the studio probably had it in the back of their mind. We might need to focus a little bit more attention on something else than what Wackadoo is doing over here.
Yeah.
Give him his little playground to go play on, but then we'll misdirect the fans over here with our left hand. Oh, by the way, let you know, no surprises, but Michael Keaton is coming back to be Batman.
Yeah.
So, and still at the same time, it's still like it's what everybody wanted. So I will definitely hats off to Warner Brothers for giving us that.
Yeah.
And
it wasn't just like a 2-second cameo either. He played a significant role in that film.
Yeah. That was this part that surprised because I going in, thought that was going to be, one of those little brief little 30-second, 45-second. He pops in, haha. By the way, just so you guys don't forget, I'm Batman.
Yeah.
And then he was gone again. You can't have him put the damn suit back on without having him say the two words,
Yeah.
being I'm Batman. Because even as much as Christian Bale had his iconic definition of that line,
Yeah.
it really was Michael Keaton delivering that line in the first scene of the 89
Yeah.
movie.
Yeah. When he has the goon says, "What are you?" And he goes, "I'm Batman."
Yeah.
Just
Because that's literally the first time you hear him say anything. And the fact that, again, for most people who are old enough, you're probably coming into watching this movie, and the only understanding you have of Michael Keaton, like we've been saying, Mr. Mom, Gung Ho, all the other stuff that he's done that isn't very, dark and gritty and all that, but yet that very first line that you hear come out of his mouth, he gets the anger, he gets the angst, he gets the darkness, he gets everything. Just bam, I'm Batman.
yeah.
Not necessarily as much as Christian Bale does when he does it, but Michael Keaton does it enough to grab your attention and make you realize, oh, okay, this, I see where you're going. I'll give you some more time to see if, this is going to sink in like it needs to sink in. So, yeah,
And
he
then
does.
when we first really see him in action at that warehouse where he sees the Joker in not the Joker form yet, but in Jack Napier, when he sees him and he sees Commissioner Gordon, when he's twirling his cape, it's that sequence is as good of a sequence as you're ever going to get for a superhero movie.
Well, again, because like you said, that's really the first time you really get
the action
Batman. You get a little bit in that opening scene with the muggers,
Yeah.
but it doesn't really go full on into action mode until they're at Axis Chemicals.
Yeah. Yep.
Where the cops are trying to quote unquote stop Jack from doing what he's supposed to be doing. Wink, wink. The cops are working with Jack's mob boss.
Yeah.
Whatever his name, I forgot what his name was, but then Batman shows up to do the right thing, do the superhero thing, and you're getting spin kicks, you're getting punches, you're getting all of that, and again, not to beat a dead horse, but this is all stuff that nobody's really seen a whole lot of Michael Keaton doing.
Yeah, and this is what I think the first time or one of the first times you see him leave. I remember the scene with someone says, "Who is that guy?" And Gordon says, "I don't know." And when he says, "I don't know," you see Batman just float in the air with a puff of smoke.
Yeah, I mean, there was a certain level of obvious special effects to this movie, but I felt like Burton did a good job at incorporating both the quality special effects that needed to be there, but then still using like the practical effects that help make it seem more real.
Yeah, and the great part about it, like you're saying, is they filmed it on Pinewood Studios. They didn't film it in front of a green screen. Like everything, the Batmobile was real. I mean, it really drove itself. The Batarang really worked. All of his stuff really was practical.
Which helps add to that level of realism that I think really, really, really works for this movie. I think green screens had been a part of filming throughout the course of history up to that point, and I really feel like using green screens or blue screens or whatever color they're using at the time would have really hurt the visual aspects of this movie,
Yes.
and it probably would have made it feel a lot more like the Adam West TV series.
Right. Yeah, and that's what was um so wonderful about that film is just how specific every design was, from the costumes to the props to the clothing, the color, even the clothing having that palette of black and white, gray kind of thing. And then Joker comes in with all of his bright colors. Um, Even the color palettes they used on the camera. I mean, just everything worked really well together. And like you said, I think green screen would have taken away from it.
Well, here's one of the things that really defined the various eras of these Batman movies for me. Like, okay, Tim Burton's vision that carried out through Batman and Batman Returns
Right.
was clearly a very Tim Burton esque vision.
Yeah.
Where for me, I think where things started to go off the rails was when things clearly started going from Tim Burton's vision and Joel Schumacher came in for Batman Forever. And I appreciate the fact 100% that Joel Schumacher didn't 100% copy Tim Burton and tried to do his own thing with it. But I think Tim Burton's vision worked so well that, I mean, even to the extent that I'm not necessarily as big of a Batman Returns fan as I am Batman 89. Not saying I don't love Batman Returns, but um, still, both of those movies are so great, though, together in that world. And now you've got Burton's out, Schumacher's in, and now you're starting to. You still have that lingering aspect of the dark, gothic Gotham from Burton's world, but now you've got Schumacher's trying to bleed some warmer color into the visual aspects as well. You know, you're starting to see more, you know, vibrant colors in like the sky, and there's more
Right.
reds and oranges and
Yep.
all of that.
Costumes are brighter.
All of the
So,
costumes are starting to
yeah.
get brighter, and it's like I really liked where things were going beforehand. This
Yeah.
is not what I signed up for the first two movies.
Yeah. I even think Batman Returns had more black and white than the previous 89 film. Because 89 to me was black, white, and gray, but Batman Returns was just always all black and white because they were in that the snow weather. They had snow everywhere. Then every time the
Well,
penguin had his umbrella was black and white.
yeah, because well, and a lot of that has to do with the time of year too. I mean, even
Yeah,
during like the daytime scenes in that movie, it still was dark and black and white
yeah,
because of the fact that it's literally being the story is unfolding during Christmas.
yeah.
So I've never been to New York during the holiday season, nor do no offense, I plan on going to New York anytime soon.
Well, you're always welcome.
I It's not the fact that I don't. There's aspects of being in New York that I would love to experience once in my life. I'm not a huge fan of crowds, and there's a lot of people in New York City.
Yeah. The crowd portion looks like that. The visuals, not necessarily.
Yeah, but so yeah. Was there anything about the original Burton movie that you felt missed the mark or you couldn't necessarily get behind?
Oh my God. Yeah, that's another thing. When we watch those movies, we at least me, I ask myself, what would I change if I could? And honestly, nothing. There's nothing you could possibly add to that to enhance it. I think it was perfect the way it was. I think Tim Burton let everyone play and let everyone have fun and to bring their own kind of, flavor to it. And you could definitely tell, even with Jack Nicholson, he didn't tell Jack how to play the Joker. That was Jack Nicholson.
Oh, 100%. And Jack Nicholson was awarded that. I classify it as being awarded the role because, and again, I'm not putting Jack Nicholson up against Heath by any stretch of imagination. You cannot compare these two characters
No.
at all. They're two totally different styles, two totally different versions of what that character is. Just like I don't think you can compare Jack to Cesar Romero. Those two characters are totally different. So Cesar Romero is iconic for what he did for the TV series. Jack Nicholson is iconic for what he did for the 1989 movie. Heath Ledger is iconic for what he did in 2008 for The Dark Knight.
Right.
I'm not
Right.
going to lie, I haven't seen Joaquin in The Joker yet. I've been kind of dragging my feet on it because for me, I have my three favorite Jokers, and we've already discussed them. Caesar, Jack, and Heath, and it's like, do I really want to tempt fate and have Joaquin screw it all up for me?
Kasey, you got to see this Joaquin Phoenix is holy shit, man. I mean, it was so good.
I mean, I will watch it at some point. It's just one of those things that I keep dragging my, and it's not helping the fact either that the more I drag my feet, something else pops up from time to time, and it's like, ooh, you know, technically, it's I guess you could call it movie adult ADHD, where it's like, okay, here we go. Oh wait, look, squirrel, and now
Yeah.
you're over here, and before you know it, it's been 4 or 5 days, and you forget what's going on over here, and it's like, you know, it. I haven't heard a whole lot of bad stuff about Joaquin in the Joker. I mean, I've heard worse about Jared Leto as the Joker,
Yeah.
but I, again, for me, I struggle with the whole idea of getting behind Joaquin because to me, in my eyes, I'm still old enough to remember his older brother.
Right. River Phoenix.
And yeah, and I don't want to compare the two because obviously the two of them are totally different. And Joaquin has grown up in the business from younger pre Joaquin days to what he is today. And River didn't get that per se, but then at the same time, River Phoenix has still been a part of some of my all-time favorite movies.
Yeah.
The main one being Stand by Me, and the fact that we're sitting, as far as this show goes, we're sitting on, by the time this airs, 210 plus episodes, and Stand by Me was the second episode we ever recorded 3 years ago. So, but I digress. It's not about Stand by Me. It is about Batman, and you are technically right. I do need to sit down and watch the Joker, and if I don't, just I use the phrase a lot, but I need to just rip it and rip it and rip the Band-Aid off and do it and experience it because
Right. Right. And and I think like I said before, we have to keep in mind that when we watch these movies, we can compare them because they're in a totally different style. And for example, Jack Nicholson, Tim Burton needed him to be that. This last one, they wanted Joaquin Phoenix to be what he was. They wanted Heath Ledger to be what he was. So they wanted specific Jokers for each individual movie.
Yeah, I mean, like we said, Caesar did what he was asked to do.
Yes.
Jack Nicholson brought that element of, I guess, if you want to compare, if you're looking for a comparison, he brought the Godfather aspect of the character to the Joker for Tim Burton's movie. Heath Ledger brought a more psychological, dare I say, Hannibal Lecter without the cannibalism aspect.
Yeah, for sure.
The Dark Knight movie. I can't necessarily say what Heath brought to. I mean, maybe from what I've seen preview wise, maybe it's more of a refined flamboyance, like a psychotic flamboyance.
Yeah,
it's not necessarily like the Cesar Romero flamboyance that you got with the TV series. But I mean, I always come back to the whole, and like I said, I haven't seen the movie, but the first thing you always think about when you think about that Joker movie with Joaquin is him dancing down the stairs.
Yeah, that's the big scene that everyone loves.
So, but
when you talk about acting performances, Joaquin Phoenix he was on another level.
Well, and he is a very talented actor too. He's done some work that I absolutely have loved as well. Gladiator, Walk the Line,
Signs.
Yeah, exactly.
Something completely different.
So, I think
that's another thing. When you talk about versatile actors, I mean, Joaquin Phoenix he's done like everything.
Yeah, no, I mean, that definitely is my favorite style of actor, is somebody that can bring a lot of different aspects to the table. I mean, obviously we found out with this Batman movie that Michael Keaton could do that to an extent.
Yeah.
I like what Heath Ledger brings to the table. I like Joaquin obviously can do it. Another person that is forever latched to Tim Burton's hip, and everybody knows it because if it's a Tim Burton movie, you can almost bet at some point Johnny Depp's going to pop up.
Yeah,
absolutely. At some point in the movie, and Johnny Depp is again a very first. If you look at where Johnny Depp's come from, Nightmare on Elm Street 1, where he debuted, all the way through
Edward Scissorhands, Sleepy Hollow,
Benny and June, Sleepy Hollow,
Wonka,
Pirates of the Caribbean, everything. I mean, you just wow. Tom Hanks, another actor that is that way as well. So, I would say for me, probably the one thing I hated about the movie the most was I didn't as much feel like there was chemistry per se between Michael Keaton and Kim Basinger.
Okay.
Like I feel like there's been other female counterparts in the other various Batman movies that I think had a better connection with that particular. I think Michelle Pfeiffer had a better connection with.
Oh, absolutely.
Michael Keaton in Batman Returns than Kim Basinger. I think Kim Basinger, in a lot of ways, for most of this movie, kind of phoned it in. I think, okay, maybe not phoned it in, but I think there may have been more chemistry between Kim Basinger and Robert Wuhl. guy who played her, Knox,
Yeah.
Alexander Knox. I think there may have been more chemistry between the two of them than there was between Kim and Michael. And unfortunately, that sucks because there really has to be that connection between the female lead and the superhero. Otherwise, it just feels like it's misfiring at
Thinking
some
about it,
point.
I do agree with you because I remember there was a scene where Bruce Wayne was contemplating if he was going to tell his girlfriend that he's Batman or not, and
Mhm.
that was the scene where he puts the metal sheet under his chest and he gets shot by the Joker.
Yeah, and one of my favorite scenes in that whole entire movie because one, you get the iconic line from the Joker, "Have you ever danced with the devil by the pale moonlight?" And two, you get that moment from Michael Keaton where he literally fucking snaps and grabs a freaking fire
Let's
poker
get nuts. Yep.
and whips it against the vase on her fireplace mantle and goes completely fucking nuts. And it's like, oh, so there is an element of, you've got issues going on in your head.
Yeah.
I know we've talked about it to an extent, but we're starting to see the fact that he's putting two and two together and realizing who the Joker is. The Joker being Jack
Yeah.
Napier, who is being the person who killed his mom and dad. So, it's very intriguing to that aspect. Um,
Yeah, and like you were saying, if they had a better connection, I think that scene would be more powerful for sure. Because he's the entire time he's saying, "I'm going to tell her I'm Batman," and you're like, "Well, I don't see why you would."
yeah. Well, again, another time, I'm not as huge of a fan of Christian Bale per se as Batman, but he's further down my list. But I think even to drive my point home even more, though, I think Christian Bale and Maggie Gyllenhaal had better chemistry than Kim, Kim Basinger and Michael Keaton did. And I'm not putting it on Michael at all. I think
Yeah.
Michael Keaton tried. I think there was times I felt like watching this movie where Kim Basinger looked stoned out of her freaking mind. And it's like,
She might have been.
well, I mean, that
You never
wouldn't
know.
necessarily be public knowledge at that point. I mean, pot was still illegal back then, but it it just felt like to me she wasn't trying, and it's like even if she had tried a little bit, then it probably would have had an element of more believability to it.
Also, kind of monotone in a few lines that she said. I remember when she was in the Batcave, she was kind of monotone in her lines.
Yeah, and Michael Keaton even had aspects where he was incredibly monotone, but
Yeah.
at the same time, there was moments where the monotone disappeared, and like with that scene at her apartment where he flips out and gets
Yeah.
completely crazy, where the monotone disappears and
Yeah.
he changes it and goes to a different level.
And but like I say monotone, but what if she gave like something really great and Tim Burton was like, no, like bring it down a little bit. Like I don't know like what he might
That
have
could be too.
tried to be going for. Maybe he was trying to
That very well could be
yeah,
a direction that he gave her on set was
yeah,
rein it down,
yeah.
and I want a little bit more monotone from you.
We
So
we want Bruce Wayne to be in the spotlight now. Bring it down a little bit.
yeah, and I was gonna say it's more about his story, but at the same time, it's still there is elements of the Vicky Vale character that are a part of that
Yeah.
story. So you can't just blow off Vicky being a part of that story. So wow, I didn't realize we were this late into the episode already. I guess we'll, for lack of time, um, bump ahead and So, would you like to let the listeners know your overall feeling of the movie, and then give the movie your ultimate rating out of 5, with 1 being hot garbage and 5 being, well, Batman 1989?
I mean, I think this movie is fantastic. This is one of my favorite Batman movies of all time. My favorite is Batman Returns, and that was just my favorite. Um, but I think I would give this movie, I'd say 4.5 out of 5 bats.
Yeah, I'm honestly not gonna lie. I agree 100% with your rating. It's probably definitely 4.5 out of 5 Dances with the Devil by the Pale Moonlight.
Yep.
Um, but again, like we've talked about throughout this entire recording, I didn't know it at the time, but like I said, this is Burton movie number 3. This is me falling in love with the genre and the style and everything that he brought to the table. Not just him, but everybody, Jack, Michael, you know, even Kim Basinger and Robert Wool and everybody that was a part of this movie. It was a great cast, great soundtrack, great direction, great script. It was funny. It has you on the edge of your seat.
It has great action sequences.
Yeah, it's everything that you would want in a superhero movie. But when you think about Tim Burton, you may not necessarily think, "Oh, this is going to be an epic superhero movie for me." I mean, like we all know, like you have your Zack Snyder's, you have your Joss Whedon's, and all these people that have directed the current DC universe or the current Marvel franchises, John Favreau or whatnot, that have done really great jobs with the current stuff that we've seen. But you know, they kind of sort of fit that mold of that type of vision. And I think all of those guys fit into that bubble. Tim Burton doesn't fit into that bubble with those people.
Right.
So it's definitely a great movie. And dare I say, if you guys ignored my advice in the beginning and haven't seen this movie and hit pause and gone and watch the movie and come back, and you still just listen to the episode, I personally think, and I'm not necessarily trying to speak for Gary, but um, I feel like we both would definitely recommend everybody go out and see this movie if you have not seen it.
Absolutely. I highly recommend it. If you want a Batman movie that has a little bit of everything, you're not going to get much better than this one.
Well, and it's for this very reason why I love the idea of you selecting this movie, because as everybody knows, by the time this episode drops for release on YouTube and wherever you get your spot or your podcast listening fix, um, we're smack dab in the middle of our movies everybody should see once in their lifetime theme. And this is definitely one of those movies that I feel like, even if you're not a diehard hardcore superhero fan, I feel like you could sit down one time and watch this movie and not necessarily full on 100% hate it. It's got something for everybody.
And that's one of the things that I love about it is I saw it when I was very young and I appreciated it then. And then I saw it when I was a lot older and then I still appreciate it then. There's something for all ages in that film to love.
Yeah. I mean, it, there's stuff for younger kids, there's stuff for teenagers, there's stuff for adults. I
Yeah.
mean, it's still, I'm not going to lie, I probably watched this movie 2 or 3 weeks before you requested it. And when you requested it that night, I sat down and watched it again. It This is a movie I absolutely positively love, and I don't think I will ever not be in love with this movie. Nothing against some of the other movies in the franchise, but at the end of the day, This and The Dark Knight, for me, are probably my two favorite Batman stories that have been told. So, wow. I feel like we didn't get everything covered that we needed to get covered, but unfortunately, that's the problem when you have an episode that is so chock full of epic goodness like this movie is. So, um,
What was the
but
inflation
obviously,
rate?
for 4.11 million,
Yeah, 4.11 from
um,
1989 to, let's say, 2023.
I will, as I am talking, I will pull that up.
I'm going to take a wild guess and say it's at least 750,000. 750 million.
So, again, like I said, as I'm talking, and we're moving into the whole aspect of obviously thanking the listeners for being here each and every week. You guys are incredible, and you guys are the reason why we've made it 3 years and 200 plus episodes. That's way past 1989. Made it past the 3 years and 200 plus episodes. Um, 400, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3. Don't mind me. I'm trying. Oh, stupid technology. 411. And 891 million dollars.
Wow.
So it's definitely a huge, huge jump.
Yeah.
So
Even nowadays, it's rare that a movie makes $600,000, $600 million.
well, if you're a Harry Potter movie, if you're a Star Wars movie, if you're okay, let's just be real. If you're a geek movie, you have the potential to make a buttload of money.
Yeah.
Avatar, Star Wars, Marvel, maybe not as much current DC,
Maybe
but
James Bond.
Bond definitely.
Good Bond
Um,
film.
depending upon who they get to replace Daniel Craig. But I digress. That's a whole different topic that I've had before with other people, and we're not going down that rabbit hole. So, but I do definitely want to thank Gary for being here this
Well,
episode.
thank you for having me on, Kasey.
This was so much fun, and I would like to personally extend a open invitation. If you would like to come back in the future at any point, just let me know, and we will get you on the show.
Beautiful.
Maybe next time, Amanda won't be getting ready to go to the Caribbean for vacation, and well, I mean, by the time everybody's listening to this, she's already well back from the Caribbean, and sunburns have healed and all of that. But I digress. But maybe we can get Amanda on the show as well, and we can do a three-person discussion on an epic movie as well.
The Wizard of Oz.
I would be down for that. That is, there's a lot of
There's
behind
a
the
lot
scenes
about that movie.
folklore about that could be discussed. So we definitely should work on putting together something like that. So
Sure.
we will work on getting that on the schedule for everybody. Um, as everybody knows, though, like I said, we're smack dab in the middle of um, movies everybody should see once in their lifetime. I don't remember the order per se of the movies, but we've got a Deadpool episode coming up. We've got A Few Good Men coming up. We've got um, we've got some stuff coming up. The easiest way to stay updated is to just follow us on social media, and I will keep everybody updated on a regular basis as to what's coming. So Thank you, everybody, for being here again. Thank you, Gary. I look forward to getting to record more with you in the future.
Sure.
And as everybody knows, at the end of the day, we hope you guys all come back for an evening at the movies. Have a good week, guys.